Hey guys, I'm Deputy Aaron Yergin. I'm an SRO for the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and like I said, an SRO, and I'm the School Resource Officer at Orchard Knob Middle School in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And the reason I'm talking to you today on my off day in my home office at Casa de Yergin, also known as the Cabin in the Woods, is because as an SRO at a great school full of great kids, and a great administration and staff, I've been able to kind of step out of my role as specifically the school resource officer, and I've got to get in the classroom a little bit, to which I feel extremely fortunate and blessed that I worked for such good people, both at the sheriff's office and alongside with at Orchard Knob. Um, but I've got to teach a little bit, and being a police officer, I started getting to the social studies classrooms and talking about your people's constitutional rights and civil liberties. And I've given numerous classes to the students there on the subject, but I've also gotten a chance to address a couple different groups of parents. Um, Most recently, I got to give this class to a group of our Hispanic parents, and it was really was truly a blessing. But what I realized is a lot of people don't know the Constitution. They don't know their rights. Okay, and I thought, well, the class that I normally give to people, I'll just put it on tape. All right. And one thing I recommend, read your Constitution. You can't complain about my rights if you don't know what your rights are. Um, and they're easy to get, little pocket constitutions. The Cato Institute, you can order them there for $1. I think the ACLU has them on their website. Heritage Foundation, I think you can order them. The National Constitution Center has them. Um, those are the ones that I actually keep in my office at school and give to kids and parents. And then I've got one in my home office here, a little pocket constitution. And this is actually um, from Dennis Kucinich's presidential campaign from 2008. Okay, but real quick, I'm going to go through the down and dirty of the first 10 amendments. Okay, we know that's our bill of what's known as our Bill of Rights. Okay, and when it comes to your interaction with law enforcement, these are the things that are really going to come into play. Okay. So, obviously, as a police officer, I take an oath to uphold the Constitution, try to do that daily, strive to do that daily. I think part of that is to educate people on their rights, but as a citizenry, you should know your rights too. So, go get a pocket Constitution. If you're in the Chattanooga area, especially if you're in Highland Park or close to Orchard Knob Middle School, come by. I've got boxes of them. Okay, I'll give you one. But I'm going to spend a lot of time on these 10 amendments, especially the ones that you may have that bring you into contact with law enforcement. Some of them will kind of breeze through, but some of them will spend a lot of time on. Okay, so the first one, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, and freedom of association. Oh, also, before we get too far into it, obviously these are the Bill of Rights, the United States Constitution. Okay, we all know that each state, each judicial district, they have corresponding case law as to how these rights are interpreted. So some of the stuff I say here, it's Tennessee specific. Okay, so it may be handled differently in your state if this video gets out there. Um, so obviously check with your local authorities. So if some of this doesn't make sense, it's because I'm talking about Tennessee specific issues as it deals with interaction with law enforcement. Okay, so back to the First Amendment, freedom of speech. Okay, that means the government, someone like me, a police officer, can't stop you from saying something. Okay, no matter how vile it may be, as long as you're not hurting someone else, it can be as vile as you want it to be. The only exception on the federal level is what's called insightful speech. That's not protected by the First Amendment. Okay, freedom of the press. Obviously, we know that means that the government can't stop a newspaper, a blogger, a journalist, or some kind of news organization from printing or saying something. Okay. Freedom of religion, pretty cut and dry, which means in our country you have the right to worship whoever you want or not worship them, and the government can't really stop you from doing so. Again, unless you're trying to hurt someone else. All right. Freedom of association. Freedom of association is the easy one. In layman's terms, you can hang out with whoever you want to hang out with, talk about whatever you want to talk about, and do whatever you want to do together. Again, as long as you're not trying to hurt someone else. Okay. Now, let's go back to freedom of speech. Okay. Say obviously I'm a police officer. I'm in my uniform and you see me on the street. I'm standing on the sidewalk. You come up to me and you just call me anything you want to possibly call me. The most vile stuff. Okay. Talk about how you don't like me and how I'm a horrible person and this, that, and the other. Can I arrest you? No, I cannot. Now, there is such thing in Tennessee called disorderly conduct. Okay. And speech comes into play in this. But it's not necessarily what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. What I mean by that is, say me and you're on that street corner and you're just giving me down the road. You hate my guts. You think cops are pigs. They're horrible. You can't stand them. Okay? It's fine, man. Can't arrest you. It's your right by the First Amendment. But if you're getting to the point when you're articulating your disgust with me that it's causing problems as far as other people that may be around. Say there's people trying to get in and out of a business or just get in their car or drive down the street, and it's making everybody kind of stop and look and see what you're doing. Okay, it's what us in law enforcement call it makes them stop going about their activities of daily living. Okay, that's disorderly conduct, and you can be arrested or cited for it. Okay, again, that's not so much in what you're saying; it's how you're saying it. All right. Now, the Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. Okay. Now, we all know that in the United States, we have the constitutional right to own firearms. Okay. In Tennessee, what are the exceptions? No convicted felons. Okay. Now, no one convicted of a domestic violence assault. Okay. Also, let's talk a little bit about concealed carry permits. Again, in Tennessee. In Tennessee, if you want to have a gun in your home or in your car, the car is a recent change. You do not have to have a concealed carry permit. Okay? We treat your car as an extension of your home when it comes to weapons. Okay? At one point in time in the state of Tennessee, you did have to have one. Now you do not. If you want to carry it, what's called open carry, which is on your person, okay? Open where the whole world can see it, okay? You do not have to have a concealed carry permit, okay? You only have to have a concealed carry permit in Tennessee if you legitimately want to conceal it on your person. If you want to conceal it under the seat of your car or in your glove box or middle console, good to go. If you want to open carry it on your side, good to go. If you want to keep it in your house, good to go. But if you want to conceal it or hide it on your person in the state of Tennessee, you have to have a concealed carry permit. Now, for y'all that don't know me, again, I'm an SRO, and I'm an SRO at a inner city school in Chattanooga. Okay, and I always tell my students this: they should have every right, as they get older, to own a gun, to protect themselves, protect their family, protect them loved ones, just like I do. Okay, I'm no better than they are. So I tell them to think about that kind of stuff as they get older. The last thing I want any of my students to do is catch some kind of case that's going to make them a felon and they won't be able to own a gun. Okay, I think um, The example of Dr. Martin Luther King is a great one. For you all that don't know, back in the 50s, Dr. King tried to get a concealed carry permit because of all the threats made against his life. And the state denied it. Okay, we all know that later in 1960, tragically, Dr. King was assassinated in Memphis. Okay, some of our gun control laws come from a very racist place. So think about that. Think about that as you go through life. You have every right to defend yourself just like I do. So don't do something that's going to get you hemmed up where you catch a felony case. You're not allowed to own a weapon. Okay. Now, oh, also, this came up when I was speaking to um, some of the Hispanic parents at the school. Non citizens. Okay. Non citizens, i.e., immigrants, can own a weapon in Tennessee if they have a hunting license and if they are a legal immigrant. Now, Third Amendment. The Third Amendment we're not really going to cover. It's the quartering of soldiers during wartime. Okay, which basically means the government can't come in and put a bunch of troops in your living room for no reason. Okay, so moving on to the Fourth Amendment. This is one that's really important that I want you to pay attention to because this has to do with the right against unlawful search and seizure. Okay, basically that means that the government, that the police, someone like me, okay, I need either your consent, probable cause, or a search warrant to search your things. Okay, now there is a little bit of difference. We're going to talk about search warrants and just plain old probable cause and something that's called the Carroll Doctrine. Okay, it's based on a Supreme Court case from the 20s, okay, that governs vehicles. All right, so here's an example. Say I knock on your door as a police officer. Okay, you open the door, I smell weed. Okay, based on the smell of weed, can I search your house? No, I cannot. Okay, the smell of weed, would that be probable cause to go get a search warrant? Yes, it would. Okay, when it comes to your home, I either need your consent or a search warrant. Now, say you're driving down the street, okay, and I'm behind you in my patrol car. You blow through a stop sign or you make a right hand turn and you don't use your blinker and I pull you over on a traffic stop. I go up there to explain to you, hey man, I'm Deputy Jurgen from the Sheriff's Office. The reason I stopped you, uh, you blew through that stop sign. Okay, while I'm talking to you, I smell marijuana. Okay, can I search your vehicle? Yes, I can. Okay, and that's where the Carroll Doctrine comes into play. Homes, for the most part, are stationary. They can't move. So I need consent or a search warrant. Because vehicles can move and it wouldn't be practical for me to try to go get a search warrant and to come back to search your vehicle, okay, I just need the probable cause. All right. Also, in Tennessee, if you're on parole or probation, all right, you may have signed what's called a Fourth Amendment waiver. And you should know whether you're a Fourth Amendment waiver or not. All right. But if you're on parole or probation in the state of Tennessee and you're a Fourth Amendment waiver, law enforcement can search your things without consent and without a warrant. Okay. Now, the Fifth Amendment. Okay. The Fifth Amendment, that's your right against self incrimination, Miranda rights, things of that nature. Okay. This is a big one too because this one is kind of portrayed on TV and in the movies and the media, and it's not portrayed uh, in an accurate way. And sometimes as a police officer, this bothers me, okay? Because it's happened to me before. I get it. Nobody likes to go to jail. Totally on board with that. But say I'm getting ready to hook you up to take you to jail. You start resisting arrest because I haven't read you your rights. Then it leads to a use of force. Unfortunately, it could lead to one of us getting hurt. Okay? And I've heard it. Well, on Law and Order, they did this, or my cousin said this. Is your cousin a lawyer? Then then stop. Okay? Look. Okay? Does everybody know their Miranda rights? You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you. Now, do you understand those rights, which I've just read to you? Okay. If I go to a scene and I'm investigating a crime, okay, and I haven't made an arrest decision yet, I'm just investigating. I can ask you all the questions I want, okay? I don't have to read you your rights. The only time that I have to read you your Miranda rights is post arrest, which means after I've arrested you, and I'm going to ask you questions specifically about that crime. Now, some departments, some agencies, you know, they that to me they over Mirandize, okay, and I think it's going to set a bad precedent. Only time will tell. But right now, by law as it stands, you only have to be Mirandized after your arrest, and if I want to ask you questions specifically about that crime. If I want to ask you about who you like better, the Bears or the Packers, it doesn't matter. I don't need to Mirandize you. I wouldn't ask you that anyways, but just saying. Okay, because everybody knows the Bears are better than the Packers, at least on defense. Anyways, now, self-incrimination. Okay, basically the Fifth Amendment says the government can't make you testify against yourself. Okay, there's also something known as spousal privilege, which means the government can't make your spouse testify against you. Now they can choose to, but the government can't make them. Also, something that you may have told your spouse in confidence about your case, okay, that stays between you and your spouse. Just know though that if there's a third party when you and your spouse are discussing something, that third party being in the room it voids spousal privilege. Okay. Also, there is what's called the public safety exception to Miranda. Okay. Say there's a terrorist attack, there's a bomb, there's a kidnapping, something crazy. All right. And I know you're the one. I know you're the bomb maker. All right. And I put handcuffs on you, but your bomb's still out there, and we're trying to save a mass, people from a mass casualty. I can start asking you questions without Miranda. Okay. Although something like that, that's something that's going to come down from above. I myself, that's not my level. That's way up here. Uh, that's usually lawyers and people with a lot more education than me get involved. But just know that something like that does exist. Okay. Now, the Sixth Amendment. Okay. The Sixth Amendment is your right to trial, your right to confront your accuser, your right to a lawyer. Okay. Basically, we know in the United States, again, through Miranda, through the Fifth Amendment, you've got the right to a lawyer, you've got the right to a trial, you've got the right to quote unquote a speedy trial, which doesn't mean you get arrested today, you're in trial, your trial next week. It just means, like unlike places where there's dictators, we can't just let you languish away in jail forever and ever without charging you or without taking you to trial. All right. It also means that in criminal cases, you get to pick whether, as an adult, you get to pick whether you want your case heard by just a judge, where he or she will decide your guilt or innocence, or if you want your case heard by a jury. Okay? There is an exception to this. Juveniles. Juveniles do not have this luxury. Okay? If your case is tried, if you're a juvenile and your case is adjudicated in juvenile court, it will be decided by a judge. You don't have the jury option. Okay? The Seventh Amendment. The Seventh Amendment is basically just like the Sixth Amendment, except for civil cases. Okay, so if I sue somebody, somebody sues me, I can decide whether a jury will decide it or a judge will decide it. Okay. Again, the Sixth and Seventh Amendments basically the same thing. Sixth Amendment deals with those aspects as they would fall into a criminal case, and the Seventh Amendment deals with them as they would fall into a civil case. Okay. Now, the Eighth Amendment. The Eighth Amendment is the right against cruel and unusual punishment and excessive bail and fines. Now, cruel and unusual punishment is pretty cut and dry. That means the punishment has to fit the crime. Okay. So if you shoplift something from Walgreens, you know, can you go to jail for 20 years? No. If you kill someone, can you go to jail for 20 years? Yes. Now, the excessive fines and bails, okay, a lot of people may know, some may not know. In the United States, we used to have what's called debtors' prisons, where basically if you couldn't pay your bills, they'd put you in jail. Okay. The courts realized that that affected minority communities more so than anyone else, so it wasn't free and equal. Um, it wasn't equal justice, so it's been deemed unconstitutional. Okay. But just because you are poor, that does not mean you're going to get a low bail. I know some states, they've had bail reform lately. New York, California. I know California goes off a point system, not necessarily monetary bail. This is Tennessee specific. Okay. When you are arrested and you go before a judge or a magistrate for your bond hearing or your bail hearing, okay, they're going to look at a few different things. Okay. They're going to look at the heinousness or the gravity, severity of the alleged offense you committed. Okay. They're going to look at your criminal history. They're going to look at your ties to the community. And they're going to look to see how likely you are or are not to show up to court. All those things get computed almost into like a mathematical formula, and it'll give the range of what your bail could be. All right. Again, just because you're poor, it doesn't mean you're going to get a low bail. Okay. Especially if you are accused of committing murder and you have a history of uh, bail jumping, failure to appear, and also other violent felonies in your record, you're probably going to get a high bail. Okay. Now, the Ninth Amendment. The Ninth Amendment is the enumerations clause. Basically, what that says is just because the Constitution doesn't specifically lay it out, that doesn't mean you can or can't do it. Okay. Um, Depending on what side of the legal or political spectrum you're on, again, I'm not trying to get into politics. I'm just wanting you guys to know your rights. Some will say, well, if the Constitution doesn't say it, the Constitution doesn't say you can do it, then you can't do it. And some will say, if the Constitution only says you can't do it, then you can't do it, or vice versa. I probably confused you there. I think I kind of confused myself. But basically, some people will say, well, the Constitution says we can only do A, B, or C. So we have to do A, B, or C. We can't do D. Okay. And some will say, well, the Constitution doesn't really speak on it. So either we can't do it because the Constitution doesn't speak on it, or we can do it because the Constitution doesn't speak on it. Okay. Now, the 10th Amendment is what's called the States' Rights Amendment. And basically, what that says is anything that's not laid out in the Constitution as a responsibility of the federal government is left up to the states and to the people. Excuse me. Now, there is some debate on this as far as how much the federal government can get involved in things. Some people will say 10th Amendment, 100%. If it doesn't say it in the Constitution for the federal government, it's only for state and local governments. Some people will counter that with their interpretation of the General Welfare Clause. Again, I'm not getting political here. What I will say is, I think the 10th Amendment gets a bad rap. And the reason that is because of Jim Crow and slavery. Obviously, those are horrible things in our nation's history. Uh, Slavery is America's original sin. It can be said that we've still not 100% overcome it. Um, and it's historical fact that some people would use the 10th Amendment, okay, to keep certain classes and certain races of people down because they're like, well, it's not addressed in the U.S. Constitution, so we're going to do it like this in Tennessee. So you stay out of it, federal government. Okay. Obviously, something like that, something like they did with Jim Crow with the gun control laws towards blacks people and uh, voting rights. Obviously that's horrible, horrible. But what I tell my students when I give this talk is the words on the in the 10th Amendment or in the Constitution, they're just words, guys and girls. Okay, it's the heart and the intent behind the person that's using them. Okay, that's what's either good or bad. Because I'll give you an example of where the 10th Amendment was beneficial to people. In the 1850s, the U.S. government passed the Fugitive Slave Act. Okay, and basically what that said is, if a slave escapes from somewhere, makes it up north, makes it to somewhere that it's free, okay, that's considered a free territory, um, the slave had to be returned to wherever it came from. The people were obligated by law to do so, and if they didn't, they could get prosecuted. Okay, well, just like some people use the 10th Amendment for bad things, okay, for unspeakable horrible things, some people use the 10th Amendment for good because a lot of states passed laws using the 10th Amendment kind of against this federal Fugitive Slave Act. And basically they said, I don't care what the federal government says, slavery is horrible. If if someone can make it up here, we're going to do what we can do to protect them. Okay? So again, I think the 10th Amendment kind of gets a bad rap. I think it's not so much the text itself as it is the heart and the intent of the person using the text. Now, guys, that was the first 10 amendments. That was the Bill of Rights, down and dirty, in less than 30 minutes. Um, Again, you can't know your rights if you don't read them. So get a pocket constitution. All right. Also, just a quick little shout out to the administration of Orchard Knob Middle School in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Principal Irving, assistant principals Callaway, Miller, and Duncan. I love you guys. Um, I'm truly blessed to be able to work with you all, and you all give me the access to the children that you do to allow me to really get to know them, and for them to get to know me, to get them to see a police officer in a different light. So it helps bridge some of those gaps, and it helps to show them that we are here to help them. So I couldn't be more thankful for the administration I work with at the school, and obviously at the sheriff's office I work for, by allowing me to become an SRO, putting me in that school. It's just been a great experience for me. So again, guys, know your rights. If you're nearby and you need a constitution, call Orchard Knob. Come by and see me. I've got boxes of them. I'll give them to you. All right, guys. Take care. Have a good day.